So much, sir, for joining in. That
How
really
do I
means a
how
lot
do I
to us.
get how do I get a
At
smile like how do I get a smile like yours though?
you can actually go for an exchange of that if I get the knowledge from your side, and then I can just give up my smile.
Sounds good. Fair deal. I'll be the,
So,
I'll get more from this than you will. Okay, go ahead.
you have been active very much in all the fronts, and more than that, I see so much of books behind you. And I'm not really surprised being someone who is a doctor. I'm not surprised with books, but I'm more surprised with the fact that you have more of different kind of books. I see spiritualism there. I also see politics there. So I would like to know that how did you get an interest on this? Because doctors don't get time.
So two things. One is none of these books are medical books, incidentally. Yeah, and I think people slot other people into हाँ lawyer होगा तो सिर्फ court में जाएगा, doctor है तो सिर्फ patient देखेगा. But come on, all
Yeah.
of us are human beings first. And I think the great thing about especially being an IVF doctor is because everything you do is elective by appointment, it actually gives you a lot of spare time to be able to explore other interests. And I always tell people life needs to be lived in what is called a T-shaped model. What does that
Teaching
mean?
model.
That initially you learn a lot in one particular domain and you become an expert and you're recognized for that. But then you can apply whatever you've learned in that expertise to other parts of life. Really talk about being a change maker because change is made by other people, not by you. You can only act as a catalyst and you can hope that something will happen. And quite frankly, some things do happen and some things don't happen, and unexpected things happen. So it's very hard to predict. Part of it is because ultimately you need to optimize for what people want for themselves. So people aren't going to change because Dr. Malpani says, hey, don't send your kid to tuition classes. Who the hell is Dr. Malpani and why the hell should they listen to me? So we're trying to come from the approach that it's in your best interests, that you need to learn how to help your children become self-directed learners. And, very honestly, I'm not the same person I was 5 years ago. And I don't expect to be the same person 5 years from now. I think life changes, we change, it evolves, it's adapt, and that's what makes life so much fun. And that's what I enjoy. And a lot of people say, what business does an IVF doctor have telling people about teaching and learning? And the reality is the word doctor itself is derived from the word dossier, which means to teach. A lot of people don't know that, but when you get a doctorate, for example, it's because you
Yeah.
mastered that
Yeah.
particular subject.
Yeah.
And the most
Yeah.
important thing a doctor does
Yeah.
is patient education and teaching. You know how it is. Doctors love using jargon to put patients in their place, right? You're an idiot. What do you
Yes.
understand? I've spent so many years and I'm the
Yes.
expert. And I think sometimes teachers also tend to do that a little bit.
Yeah.
And I think all professionals tend to do that, in the sense we
Yeah.
tend to put people in their place, which I think is such a
Yeah.
disservice because ultimately all these are service professions. And what we're trying to do is tell parents a simple thing: no one will love your child as much as you do. And
You
therefore,
do.
you cannot afford
Yeah.
to outsource something which is such a critical part of your child's life, his ability to learn for himself, to anyone
Yeah.
else.
But I really enjoy how people try to pitch you about their business, and you are so fed up with their CVs. I myself run a small startup. Every time I'm opening up, like I take up the HR, I ask them to forward me on the CV because I have this one thing I want to go through every CV myself. I don't want my HR to only be doing it. I really like dividing it. Maybe there's something, everyone can do something. And one thing that really pisses me off is how people write out their emails. There have been people who just read me cold mails with their CV attached, nothing. And I, as much as it kind of, bothers me as an entrepreneur, but also as someone I've seen individual young children in India. If you like, in the US, you go to a child and you ask them that, hey, how are you doing? The child would like, I had a bad day. My school was this. In India, you go to a child and ask, how was your day? The child starts hiding behind the parents, or maybe is like very not willing to talk or something. I feel this is a very bad communication skill, and life skills, communication skills are not taught to us in the early ages of our education itself. What are we doing with our degrees if we have not been taught how to implement those degrees? How do you see this entire thing as?
I think everything you're saying is spot on. And I think our focus in our schooling system is so much on academic skills. So you want to
Absolutely.
cover a lot of stuff and you do that so superficially because all you're really teaching is telling kids to cram for exams so they can reproduce the answers which the teacher wants them to do. As a result of which, not only does their thinking become very shallow, I actually think they get dumbed down. They
Yeah.
actually suffer, I believe, from brain atrophy, because then you try to tell them new things and they're not willing to do it. And they're always
Yeah.
dependent on waiting to be taught. They're not willing to learn for themselves. And this
Innovate.
is
Yeah.
something which bothers me a lot. It's not even just innovation, it's even a simple thing like how do you write a CV? And therefore, if you don't know
Yeah.
how to do something, then the right thing to do is to figure out, read a book, whatever else. I think
Yeah.
one thing is at least people are acknowledging the fact that they're not doing good jobs. Now, two things are happening. As a result of which, you now get all these online classes where people are charging them
Yes.
to do it. But you're also getting a group of kids who are now saying, you know what, there is technology which can help me to figure it out. And
Yeah.
I think that is now going to become a complete game changer, which means, very honestly, if you have a PC at home, which is a safe learning space,
Yeah.
you have a group of friends. Ideally, you want two or three friends, too much, and then you just start fooling around and just having a good time.
Yes.
I mean, nothing
Yes.
wrong with having a good time, but there's a time to have a good time and a time to
Yeah.
finish your B
Yeah.
study.
You need to balance both.
So a group of two or three friends, preferably, of different ages, in fact, because it's much easier to learn from each other. And then I think if you decide this is what I'm interested in learning, I'll come back again to exactly how do you map some of that to academic learning also in a minute. But if you're interested in doing that, then I think a lot of this stuff, because a lot of neurosciences show that in order to be an effective learner, you only need four things. You need intrinsic motivation. Now, this is a kid, for example, you allow them to play a game, they're in flow. I mean, they'll be much better than their parents or anyone else ever will be.
Yeah.
They'll be able to teach their parents how to play the game. And these are complex games which require a lot
Obviously.
of
Yeah.
difficult stuff, whether it's motor skills, coordination, collaborating with
Yeah.
teams and stuff like that. But they don't do very well in school because they get bored in
True.
school. So there's intrinsic motivation. There is availability of technology because that
Yes.
gives you access to the best teachers because the best teachers are now all on,
Hmm.
whether in the form of real teachers or YouTube videos or chat GPT or whatever else, many different avatars. And then the company of friends
Yeah.
and a supportive adult, which means someone whom you
Mentor.
call back. Yes, yes. And that's why
Yeah.
not a teacher. It's got to be a coach, mentor, guide. And usually your parent is the best mentor slash coach got guide because your parent has lived through much more of life and has much more real.
I know it sounds very funny, but I did not go to college to earn a degree. It was clearly decided I'm going to college to network out, look at others' experiences, use the alumni thing, whatever, like the great alumni I have in my university, take the resources from there, great networking. And at that point of time, academicians, like my faculties, had to support me. They didn't have an option to support, kind of not support me. And I was, though, student of sociology and political science, I was sitting most of the time in the classes of MBA. I was exploring. I was going on to every club. I was saying, what are they doing? What are they creating? Those for me, it was very clear. I'm here to create something.
Perfect. The problem with colleges is that colleges use students in order to earn money. You were a
Money.
much smarter student. You used your college to further what your goals were. And that's
Yeah.
the beauty. So that some people have a great college experience because they chose to craft their experience for what they wanted. They didn't force the
Yeah.
college to fit them into a slot. And that's what you're saying, so absolutely right. And in fact, I remember this that if you allowed people to choose between going to
Yeah.
IIT and not getting an IIT degree, and getting an IIT degree and not learning anything, most of them would say, you know what, just give me the IIT degree. I don't care about learning. And unfortunately, that's what the tragedy is. I always tell people if you want something done, give it to a lazy person. You'll find the best,
We'll
most
find a shortcut. Yes.
absolutely. So if tomorrow what the teacher is going to tell you is already in a textbook, just read the textbook. There are many different learning styles. In those days, we did have YouTube videos. I'm sure if there were YouTube videos, then that's fine. And even today, lots of large universities in the US are discouraging students from actually
Yeah.
coming to the classroom. They're saying,
Yeah.
please study for yourself. And that's what I was coming to. I said, we're basically thinking about academic success and
Yeah.
then what your personal interests are. And the great thing about a lot of this stuff is it allows both. So, what we're telling parents is first keep an open mind and try what we call flexi schooling. What does flexi
Flexi schooling.
schooling mean?
Yeah.
Fine, send your kid to school from 9 to 4 or whatever else you want to do. When he comes back home for 1 or 2 hours, use the computer with all the resources and allow him to learn for himself. Call some friends, give them some popcorn. So, three things.
Yeah.
One is they will be able to complete their homework much faster.
Yeah.
Second is they will, and I don't think using ChatGPT is cheating. If that's what you need to do, because the teacher is giving you such stupid drills that you can get your answers by using chat, use it and finish it off. I don't think you learn anything by doing 100 sums. By the time you've done 5 sums, then everything after that is diminishing returns.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah.
To finish your homework, that's one. Second is doubt solving. Because the reality is the
Yeah.
teacher often doesn't have time or is not really bothered. And then you remember some things, you don't understand some, so that you can finish, you can explore, okay, these are the 4 things I didn't understand. So let me watch this
Yeah.
YouTube video or whatever else on Khan
Yeah.
Academy or whatever else. But the third, I said, I can guarantee you your kid will score at least 20% more marks than he did in the last exam.
The data says 45% of India still does not have an access to internet. During the pandemic, we went on seeing how to, there was no other option. India was not ready, like no country was ready, but US and other countries were still somewhere better when it came to education sector, because they were anyway running out with that open board system, having the digital classrooms. The school that I went to, I definitely consider myself to be privileged. No wonder I had a, kind of a digital classroom. But not every school does have that, especially the government schools. And when India lives in its villages, we do not have an access to a proper desktop, or maybe access to a proper internet accessibility. In that case, don't you think students are getting affected?
2 things I want to disagree with you.
Yes.
One is I don't think, okay, so let's take this step by step. I think COVID created a big mess, because what happened is parents thought that this is what online learning is, where the kid is sitting in front of a screen and the teacher is yapping away. It was the worst of all possible worlds, because you were forced to follow the curriculum. You were forced to sit in a chair and listen to lectures. So that is not online learning at all. I'm a big believer in online learning. I do a lot of Udemy courses. I love Udemy because that's so cost effective. $600 to learn a skill. I'd be stupid not to take advantage of that. So I think that's all fine. So I'm a big believer in using screens intelligently. So I use Kindle to read, I use my iPad to read. I think the big problem is parents don't seem to understand. They think screens are bad. And therefore they end up throwing up the baby with the bathwater, and they're doing a big disservice to their kids. But to your point, I disagree with a lot of what you're saying. So I think you're right. Some places do not have PCs. Let's come to that. You should not look at that as a problem. You should look at that as a challenge. Big difference in these 2 things, Nainisha, because a challenge has a solution. Whereas the problem kind of just paralyzes you. So 2 things. One is, why not start with low-hanging fruit? Why not start with first kids who do have access to PCs and do a good job there? Then let's keep on moving. Yes, then let's keep on moving up the value. So, for example, let's say these are these are the kids who have the computers. These are the kids who have internet access has changed dramatically. To your point, I think practically, I would say 90% of the country would have access, maybe not high speed, maybe not this thing, but today, the beauty is that you can manage a lot of this stuff, even with SMSs, even with eSIMs, even with low bandwidth. So I think a lot of the problem that you're describing were problems of the past. A lot of that has changed. That's two. And the third is, our entire point is, you don't need your own personal PC. You need shared access to a PC. And this is why we're promoting the idea of community micro schools, which means, and let me just change that name because that kind of scares people. So this is what I call community learning centers, which are digitally enabled. Think of them as libraries. Every place should have a library where kids can hang out and read whatever they want, because they can't afford perhaps to buy their own books.
Absolutely.
So if this same library had a PC, you wouldn't require any of the books, quite frankly, because then they had access to the PC. That library has access to the internet. So it's perhaps a cost, but it's a one-time cost. And the moment you divide that cost among multiple families, that cost is really peanuts. And I'll tell you one more thing. These are the same parents who will spend 2 lakhs sending their kids to Byju's or sending their kids to this thing. Then why are you so worried about their ability to buy a desktop and get internet access? So none of what you're saying is right. I think people have the paying capacity. It is the will which is lacking.
easier to say that, why startups succeed. Everyone has a line for success. Like there's something my father often used to say: success has many fathers, but failure has none. Why do you think startups fail?
Let's step up one by one. A lot of the way the startup ecosystem has evolved in India has been extremely unhealthy because it's been copied from Silicon Valley. As a result
Yeah,
of which, most startups in India, the founders do not want to solve Indian problems or Bharat problems.
yeah,
They want to solve Silicon Valley problems. So they copy the Silicon model. They basically want to raise a lot of money, burn cash, winner takes
yeah,
all. This is what I want to do, all of which makes absolutely no sense to me at all. I think, in fact, that's where the opportunity is. To your point,
yeah,
like you said, the rich people collaborate. They don't just collaborate, they collude. As a result
yeah.
of which, the rich get richer and the poor get poorer.
Who gets,
I don't
yeah,
want to get started on crony capitalism because that will be another podcast by itself. So let's stick to this.
yeah,
To your point, I think smart startup entrepreneurs understand that they can only succeed when the team succeeds. And
yeah,
therefore, they will. You can't possibly do everything by yourself. But a lot of
I
it is
understand.
related to your own self esteem, your own self confidence, your ability to say, you know what, I don't know. I need to find
Yeah,
someone who will help me do this.
help me out.
I mean, there's
Yeah,
just so many different ways of doing this. But I think the biggest disservice the startup ecosystem in India has done is entrepreneurs aren't willing to share publicly. They don't share their
yeah,
failures. And all
yeah,
if you read about success stories are all
success.
lies. Partly
Yeah,
because they're all based on press releases, which the VCs send out to the startup media. And then
yeah,
they make everyone appear like, wow, this guy is so smart. Whereas the reality was very, very, they have so much money to burn that they're perfectly okay. The cost of capital in Silicon Valley is very low. Trying to copy
yeah.
that model in India is the height of stupidity. But the trouble is startup investors talk about innovation. Tell me one innovation any startup investor has done in India.
It's a very funny thing for me to mention. I replied to a love letter by redrafting it over a chat GPT.
It's actually very sensible. What you're doing is you're not letting ChatGPT do all the work. You're not outsourcing
Yeah,
your brain to ChatGPT. You're
yeah,
using ChatGPT as a tool. So please understand, you
yeah,
started first. That's where the human in
yeah,
the loop comes in. You
yeah,
gave instructions. You then allowed
yeah.
ChatGPT to do all, pick up this vocabulary, pick this thing.
Yes,
And then finally you quality controlled it. So
yes,
all the middle stuff, which was, which is not something which interested you for whatever reason,
yeah,
and that's the right way to use technology. ChatGPT can never
yes.
replace you. But because you've learned to use ChatGPT, your love letter would be much better than either a
Better.
letter written by ChatGPT or a love letter written by Naimisha's competitor, if you have one. I'm just saying, huh? So again, I think it's the blend, honestly.
Yeah,
So I think that's absolutely everything you're saying is absolutely, and I like that approach. I like the approach
yeah,
is fine. Let me explore it. Let me see what happens. Indians, especially in the past, went way beyond.
absolutely.
It wasn't just about real life success, which is why you had dharma, artha, karma, and
Yeah,
moksha, so many things. And
yeah,
that's stuff which is necessarily taught. And that stuff you have to learn. And it's only when life beats you up sometimes when you understand the importance. And that way, I think Indians are very
absolutely.
fortunate because it's so embedded.
Yeah,
When you go to a temple, that's actually, we don't even understand what happens or why we go,
yeah,
which is
yeah,
sad. But hopefully,
yeah.
a lot of that will start happening. I'm very optimistic to tell you the truth.
So don't you think that, reading habit is something that a lot of youngsters are missing out a lot? Like, I am somebody, today is a Saturday, I don't go out on a party on a Saturday. I am somebody who I would cancel everything to just sit back and read a book. I used to read 20 books a day. Now I've reduced to 12. I'm not able to get through that, but I need to read. That keeps me going as a person. Like, even if I want to lie to someone on their face, I think I passed my graduation exam by only reading good books, because if there was one question, I may not be knowing the answer for it. I only know few keywords. I would draft out using great vocabulary and making it look so beautiful that the faculty would be like, "इसको mark नहीं दूंगा तो खुद को बुरा लगेगा."
So, Nimisha, you actually gamed the examination system very well. And I wish there were enough people who are smart. So you know what I tell everyone? If you want to
Yeah,
crack an exam, don't waste money going to all these exam prac classes.
yeah,
Look at the last year's model papers
absolutely. Read the previous
and
papers.
use ChatGPT to give you the model answers,
Yes,
and you're sorted. I can pass any exam, I can tell you, whether it's CA, whether it's anyway, let's not go there. But I don't think that's such a problem. So I think to your point, what
Yeah.
you're saying, let's come back to the reading. I don't think the reading matters. I think everyone has a particular learning style. And today, if
Yes.
you don't want to read, then read a summary of the book. If you don't want to read, then watch a
Yeah.
YouTube video where the author. If
Yeah.
you don't want to read, then watch a podcast with the author. Ultimately, what is the
Yeah.
book going to tell you? Maybe it has
Yeah.
5 minutes and the rest is fluff. So I'm not too fussed about any of that stuff. Whatever works for
Yeah.
you. So the important thing is you need to understand what your learning preferences are.
Yeah.
You need to get better and better at them. And today,
Better at.
with, as the AI world calls it, multimodal learning, uh,
Yeah.
anything, audio, great. Video, great. Learn in groups, great. Learn in a tutorial, great. Learn as a group discussion, great. Do it as an online
But
course,
learn.
great. Whatever works for you. Yeah, but life would be so boring if you stopped learning, don't you think?
It did affect me for a while. I was told that you cannot be in the English club because you're not wearing a well cleaned clothes. I mean, I don't understand how is my clothes with my English language. But I stopped going to the
We
class.
forget that most teachers, unfortunately or otherwise, are often so burdened by clerical tasks that they do not have any
Yeah.
love to spare for the child. As a result of which, they use a very cut and dried method. And I would
Yeah.
never want to be a school teacher. I think half your energy is taking roll calls and disciplining kids and keeping them in their place. Where do you have any time to spark the love of learning in a child?
Yeah.
And sparking the love of learning even on one child is hard. To do that for 40 kids,
Very
I think is practically impossible. So I think,
bandwidth here.
yeah, I mean, but I keep on telling you, schools were never designed for students, just like hospitals were never designed for patients. Hospitals are
Patience.
designed for the convenience of doctors. Hey, I'm a big shot surgeon. All my patients are under
Yes.
one. I'll come in one, do a finish around, make lots of money because they're all in one place, and they will all wait. Doctor Saab, bacha theek hoga, nahi hoga, all that. And then that's how doctors become arrogant. And I think the same thing happens
My God. Yeah.
within a schooling system that was designed not to optimize learning for students. It was designed for the convenience of school management to extract as much money as possible.
So I believe a good education is something that is accessible to even the any good policy that is accessible to even the last person in the country in the remotest part. If that policy doesn't reach there, I feel the policy fails then and there itself. And when I talk about an education, I feel it's not just a basic right. For me, the right to education is entirely a scam. I can be completely wrong about it. I can be controversial to speak about it. I find it as a complete scam. When you say right to education, a child doesn't have food in their house and you expect them to wear a clean uniform and go to the classroom to understand trigonometry. I mean, what are you talking to me about? You
I
ban
think
child labor and
so. 2 points. 2 points. One is,
yeah,
I think you talked about how bad teachers scarred you for life, and you lost
yeah,
your confidence in your ability to learn maths, and how the
mathematics.
school
Yeah,
bullies scarred you again because you
yeah,
lost your ability to have that confidence. And I think
yeah,
we forget all these. And the reality is, you talk to people, oh, my school days were the best days of my life. And the reality is, they repress all the unhappy memories and they only
yeah.
selectively remember the good times, but they're fooling
Good
themselves.
times.
I think if they were forced to go back to school, I'm sure most people wouldn't
They
do it.
won't.
But बच्चे को भेजना है तो मेरा क्या जाता है, and they only do it because it gives them free
Yeah,
time. So I can
free
watch
time.
TV channels and do whatever else I want with my life. But
Yeah,
let's not go there. But to your point, I think this right to education, I
yeah.
completely agree. The right to education really means the right for the child to decide what he wants to learn, when
Once.
he
Yeah,
wants to learn it, and how he wants to learn it. So it should
yeah,
actually be an enabling policy. And that's never,
yeah,
because right now it's the same stupid curriculum. How can it possibly be correct that a kid in Dharavi needs to learn exactly
yeah.
the same thing which a kid in Kolaba is learning when they come from
Absolutely.
such
Yeah,
different backgrounds, so much this thing. So I think it's a
absolutely.
yes. And we take pride in the fact that every Apni Pathshala is very different from every other Apni Pathshala.
Yeah.
And that's the way it should be. But I think
Oh,
all this will happen. No worry.
okay. So it's mostly differing from person to person, the experiences. Like not every, something, a child coming from parents who are divorced will have a different way of looking towards the life than a child who is coming from a very healthy family will have a different way towards looking at life. And I cannot try to sell them out the same narrative of whatever I'm studying in the same manner.
I think the secret for learning is it should be personally relevant to the student. If it's
Yeah.
not personally relevant, your eyes will glaze over and you'll go to sleep. But tomorrow, for
Yeah.
example, if someone had told you, let's say 3 years ago, you need to learn how to create a balance sheet, your first response is, why the hell should I? I'm going to hire a chartered accountant. Today,
Yeah.
because you're an entrepreneur, you understand that if you do not have a management information system, you're never going to be able to manage cash flow.
Yeah.
So now you're
Yes.
learning enough to be able to manage. So therefore,
Yeah.
it's the same Nimisha,
Yeah.
but it's the same brain.
Yeah. Bro, you had to pitch into yourself as an entrepreneur. You are going to pitch Dr. Aniruddha Malpani about one of your idea, maybe through a short mail that would motivate him to look at the mail at least. How would you do that?
I think very simple. And I always tell people, entrepreneurs, customers are 100 times more valuable than investors. So if you can show me that you have paying customers, then honestly, your job is
Yeah.
going to become 100 times easier and my job is going to become 100 times easier. So
Yeah.
the commonest mistake people make is they pitch ideas. I said, if it's just an idea, I'll give you 100 ideas. I get new ideas all the time. I need to know someone who's implemented it, has gone out to market, and then
Yes.
learned. So you should always, whenever you're pitching someone, lead with your strengths. And your biggest strength is I am generating revenue. And I have a
Okay.
lot of respect for bootstrapped entrepreneurs who are generating revenue
Yes.
because they've already learned
Yeah.
their lessons on their own dime or their father
Yeah.
in dime. And therefore,
Yeah.
they will respect my money a lot more. And they will take much better
Yeah.
care of it and they will respect whatever advice I give them. And you know
Yeah.
what? We share everything on our website. We have a website called malpaniventures.com. So we share
Yeah.
this is our investment thesis, this is what we expect, these are the common mistakes which people make. We try to tell people it's not just what
Yeah.
I tell people to do, we actually do it ourselves. So we're quite happy to do some of that stuff. So it should be that you have to tailor your email according to what
Yeah.
the person wants to hear. So if you're pitching to me, the email would be very different as compared to pitching to, let's say, Matrix. Because guess what? I'm not a VC, I'm an angel
Yeah.
investor. So my constraints, what I'm looking for, are very different from what a VC
True.
is. You've got to first understand that. Most people are extremely lazy. They just use copy and paste and send the same thing to 100 people. And then they don't get a single reply.
Yeah.
And then they say, oh, all these investors are snooty, or they only want to invest in IIT and IIM grads. In fact, I'm very happy investing in non-IIT and non-IIM, quite frankly, because I think these people have fire in their belly.
Yes.
They've learned through real life and they want to prove
That's
that
a
hum
fact.
kisi se kam nahi hai. So I'm fine. But if you're going to send me a lazy cut and paste, boss, don't waste my time. I'll tell you one thing. If you're enjoying what you
Yes.
do, that enjoyment is contagious. That joy
Yes.
goes through the screen. And if you're having a good time, the chances of the person you're interviewing having a good time will increase. And the chances
Yeah.
of the audience having a good time will also increase.
Will also
Take
increase.
advantage of that. Absolutely.